All right, well, hey everybody. My name is Scott Letty. I'm here with Stacy Sublett, and we're going to be just kind of having some conversation and some reaction from Pastor Dan's most recent video talking about the current reality of the church. So, Stacy, after kind of having watched that video from Pastor Dan, was there any specific point that he made that stood out to you?
I don't think there was any one thing in particular, but hearing him kind of recap the places that he sees God at work and that we see God at work, it was really encouraging.
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but sometimes it's easy for me to, in thinking about the big picture and where we want to go and how long we've been trying to move in this direction, sometimes it's easy for me to lose sight of the fact that we're making progress, that we are seeing good things happen. And for me, that can get discouraging when I'm not seeing the steps forward.
Yeah.
And I'm just kind of mired in the day-to-day.
Yep.
So
yeah.
It was good to hear him kind of recap, here are the things that we're seeing. It was helpful.
Yeah, I think there's something about that, exactly what you're saying, getting mired in the day-to-day that tends to... very, very rarely does it zoom in on the positive, I feel like. When you get mired down in the day-to-day, maybe it's because the word mired carries with it some negative connotations, but it's almost always like, what didn't quite go right?
Yeah.
What could have we done better? How could we have tweaked this and had it been whatever, more effective, more clear, more fruitful? And so, yeah, I think it can get to a point where, without even realizing it, and certainly not intentionally, you're just kind of zeroing in on the stuff that's not quite going the way you'd like it to go, rather than all the good stuff that's happening that's really life-giving and worth paying some attention to.
Yeah. Yeah, and so it is good every once in a while to be reminded to take a step back and, the old hymn, count your blessings, just to kind of fuel this is what we believe God's called us to do, and here's where we're seeing proof that it's happening.
Yeah. One of the things that Dan said that I kind of wanted to take a little bit of time on was just this idea of, people are being freshly engaged with mission. Jesus is moving. He's the one that's going to build his church. I think one of the things that Dan repeatedly said a couple times at the beginning was, we have Jesus.
Right.
We have Jesus. We have Jesus. And I really like that. It actually connected with me. I was thinking of, I recently was reading some of Exodus, and God's getting ready to send Moses to go kind of lead Israel into freedom. And Moses has this question of who am I to do this? And God's answer was, well, I'm going to go with you.
Yeah.
And then you fast forward to the New Testament, the Great Commission. And one of the very first things, as Jesus is kind of laying out this, hey, go forth, make disciples, teach them to obey me, and behold, I'm going to be with you. So there seems to be this like this thread from Exodus. It's about as early on into the story as you can get, all the way to the New Testament, where God's answer of how can we do this is, I'm going to be there.
Right. Yeah, and that should encourage us to know that He is not only with us big picture, but with us individually, helping us in the moment, giving us what we need. Yeah, I think that's one of the greatest promises, is that He is going to give us what we need in the moment to do the things that He calls us to do.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you, so in the area, maybe either or, I'll let you pick, in the area of kind of, Christ building His church, His power, His energy, His presence, what's propelling us forward, and touching on that other topic, that other kind of idea that Dan had, as far as there's a fresh hunger for mission.
Yeah.
More and more people going on mission. Either one of those, but where are you kind of seeing some stuff happening in your context?
Well, I'm at Penns Valley. I've been at Calvary forever, but the last 6 months or so been out at Penns Valley, and it's been refreshing for me. Dan's first evidence that we see God at work is the fact that more and more people are engaging in mission.
Yeah.
And that's what I see at Penns Valley. We had a couple over for supper, and we were just kind of talking about the current reality of Penns Valley. What do we see God doing? And that was one of the first things that we talked about, was the fact that more and more people are picking up what we're putting down. They're engaging in the mission of loving God and loving their neighbors.
Yeah.
And it's less programmatic. There are some structural things that we've tried to do to help people engage. But at Penns Valley, I'm really seeing it's more of a lifestyle kind of thing, and less of what's the next event that we can do to get after the thing, living on mission, but it's more of a lifestyle. They're embracing the principle of loving their neighbors, being interruptible, praying for their neighbors, being involved in the lives of their neighbors, and that's what we see.
Yeah,
How about you?
I think in the context of Harvest Fields, so I'm kind of part-time helping with some of the gathering pastor stuff, but then also half-time working specifically with Jonathan Weibel and Front Yard Mission. And something that we've been toying with is creating these, we're kind of calling them like Front Yard Mission kits.
Yeah.
And we've technically done 3. We did 2 most recently. It was a Christmas cookie decorating kit and a Donuts in the Driveway kit. And I think between the 2 of them, we probably gave away close to 200 kits.
Yeah.
And we'd asked people to sign up, like, hey, let us know, give us your name, contact information, because we'd like to follow up and just kind of hear how it went. Is there something we could do better with the kit, make it more accessible, that sort of a thing? And so as I was getting people's names, I was recognizing that we had a fair amount of people who had grabbed the kit who we didn't have any record of having done something in their neighborhood before. Not to say that they haven't,
Right.
But it definitely felt like these kits were kind of an on-ramp for some people taking what very well may be some first steps to like moving out in love towards their neighbors, being intentional to try to build some connection. And so I would definitely, as Dan was kind of talking about that fresh hunger to be on mission,
Yeah.
that was the kind of the first thing that popped into my head. And then similar, it's you find that balance of, we want to create some opportunities and some on-ramps for people to join, but you also want to see it happening organically because this is the life that they're choosing to live. This is the way they want to be in their community. And I think we are seeing both, and it is really encouraging.
So, follow-up question about the kits.
Mm-hmm.
I think Donuts in the Driveway was back in September. Is that right?
In the fall. Yep.
And then the cookies were around Christmas.
Yep.
What else do you have planned?
So one of the other kits we tried, and this was a little bit more early days, we probably would have refined it, but we did a s'mores kit kind of for the summer. So our idea was maybe try to do one a quarter, kind of like a seasonal kit, something that would just allow people to have an easy way to connect with some neighbors. So we may circle back, do the s'more kit again. And we're just kind of talking through, because part of it is, what will people actually get excited to do and follow through and do? And frankly, those kits, depending on, you can make them fairly extravagant and not very sustainable as far as the dollars go. But the main thing is just kind of how can we create on-ramps for people to...
I think it's really helpful.
Yeah.
For people who are saying, I want to do something, I don't know what to do or how to do. I think those kits are really helpful. I know we did both of those kits, and had a number of people in the Penns Valley Church jump on board and do them as well. Yeah,
and like I said, we've been following up with the people that took the kits and been hearing a lot of really neat stories of people kind of like, wading into it, not really having any idea what to expect, because at least in the time period that they've been in that community, not really having anything like this have happened. Like there have been no block parties. There's been no one person and kind of inviting everybody over. And so they do it kind of hoping like, well, I hope somebody shows up, and I don't go home with 24 donuts. And really having some really neat stories of people being like surprisingly blessed.
Yeah.
And I think that's the most common thread is just everybody who came and everybody who's hosted one, everybody enjoys themselves.
Yeah.
And it really does create some avenues for conversation, relationship, and missional living within the context of your neighborhood, which is a big win.
Well, and when they get a taste of, this is how it works, my hope, I know it's your hope too, that they'll be able to translate that into, okay, we don't need a kit to do this again or to do something like this.
Or wait for the next kit.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure that there are people who are waiting for the next kit to come out. But I know that more and more people, our hope is that more and more people are just going to say, okay, we can do this now. So let's have some people over and engage in those conversations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's exciting. And I think the momentum is going to continue to build. Well, let me ask you one other question.
Okay.
Something else Dan had kind of touched on in the context of the video was just, it was actually kind of his assignment to everybody who watched. He always gives us like one thing to do. And so his ask was to ponder where you see God at work in and around Calvary. And so just kind of, whether it's, specifically in the context of Penns Valley or, Calvary more at large, where are you seeing God at work, God moving, God building his church?
Yeah, I think that for me, and for a lot of the people that I'm talking to, the shift from church is what happens in the building on Sunday morning to church is who we are. It's our identity. And when Jesus says he's going to build his church, he's talking about building a people who are following him, engaged in what matters to him.
Right.
That's the biggest thing that I see. Like trying to get our heads around what is it going to look like next year, 5 years down the road, as we see Jesus building his church, multiplying disciples who are trying to multiply disciples. What's that going to look like, and how do we live into that, and how do we structure so that that's the most important thing that we're doing?
Yeah.
That, for me, I'm having more of those conversations than I've ever had before.
Yeah, and I think I've been guilty of kind of falling into the train of thought where it's like, God, building his church, Christ building his church. And usually that kind of automatically falls into the context of like, oh, people are giving their lives to Christ at a Sunday morning service.
Right.
Or there's more people showing up for a Sunday morning service, and it's, you walk in the room and it's more filled, or if 3 people raise their hand, or, whatever. But it doesn't often automatically go into the context of like neighborhoods.
Right.
Of like, Christ is building his church because, Bill has been faithfully praying for his neighbors for the last 6 months, and he just all of a sudden had an opportunity to have kind of a gospel conversation, and somebody ended up giving their lives to Christ. And then you hear about it maybe on a Sunday morning, but it's not happening in the building. It's happening in the community. It's happening in the neighborhoods.
Right.
And I do think, even based on kind of what we're talking about and what we're hoping to see, that's both what we feel like God is wanting to do. It's the direction that he's calling us to move in, but it's also where we are seeing some momentum. We're seeing some relationships being built. We're seeing people leaning more intentionally into community, into their neighborhoods, into building relationships that way. And so I'm really excited to see where that continues to go.
Yeah, I am too. In Penns Valley, there are a number of other congregations not connected to Calvary who are using the same language, talking about front yard mission, living on mission, being the church without walls, and we're praying together. The leaders of those other congregations, we're talking about what we can do to collaborate and work together to see more of that happen.
Yeah,
and that's exciting.
Yeah, especially when you have multiple churches kind of coming together with the same heart.
Yeah,
God will bless that. Well, how about you? You mind maybe just taking a few minutes and kind of praying us out?
Yeah, absolutely. Father, thank you for what we see you doing. I am glad that we have the opportunity to look back and to reflect on where we see you at work. Seeds have been planted, and we're trusting you to make those seeds grow. We want to see your kingdom come. We want to see what matters to you matter more to us and to your people. Jesus, we trust you to build your church. So we're going to keep leaning into that. We want to be obedient. We want to be faithful. We want to be hopeful. We want to see with eyes that are expecting you to be at work. So would you help us to continue to nudge each other in that direction? And would you keep bringing fruit for the kingdom? We love you and thank you for all that we see you doing, and even the things that we don't see, but we're confident that you're at work. And we give you thanks in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.